Welcome to the Talking Precision Medicine podcast, brought to you by Genialis. I'm your host, Raphael Rosengarten, CEO and co-founder of Genialis, the RNA biomarker company. On this podcast, we discuss the future of healthcare and health technology, and how advances in data and data science are fueling the next industrial revolution. If you have not already, please subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And for more information on Genialis and our unique approach to AI-driven precision medicine, please visit our website at www.genialis.com. That's www.genialis.com. Now, on to the show. What a genuine pleasure to sit with Thierry Bernard, CEO of Qiagen. As I told Thierry, Qiagen is a truly iconic brand for me, and for anyone who came up through molecular biology laboratories in the past 30 years. Their products were ubiquitous and crucial to the success of our research. In this conversation, Thierry and I talk about his global vision for precision medicine and his mantra that we leave no patient behind. Please have a listen, subscribe to the show, and leave us your comments and feedback. I'm thrilled today to welcome my guest, Thierry Bernard, CEO of Qiagen, to the Talking Precision Medicine podcast. This is a real thrill for me as a life scientist. I came up through the lab with blue, red, and white boxes with the Qiagen logo all over the lab. We use their kits for cloning, for sequencing, for running PCRs, for pretty much everything we did in the lab. It's like truly a household name in the biotechnology industry. But Qiagen does a lot more than just consumables. And so Thierry is here with me today graciously to talk about their role also in drug discovery solutions and advanced diagnostics. But Thierry, maybe I can leave it to you to introduce yourself and the company and how you view Qiagen's role in the world of precision medicine.
Well, first of all, thanks, Raphael, for having me. It's really a pleasure, and thanks for highlighting your experience with our company. It reminds me that something like a year ago, I was giving a statement in Cambridge in the UK in front of roughly 300 young PhDs from all over the world, Asia Pacific, Europe, North America. I was giving a statement or a presentation on the future of diagnostic, and at the point I just asked guys, so to be very simple, how many of you in this room have ever used a Qiagen product? And I had 350 basically raised hands, because in a nutshell, I mean, for those not knowing our company very well, I think it's fair to say that Qiagen literally democratized access to molecular biology for thousands of labs all over the world. It started more than 40 years ago. And we need to remember, if we close our eyes, that there is probably a before and after Qiagen in molecular techniques. What I mean by this is that 40 years ago, when going directly to DNA, RNA became something of value for diagnostic, running a molecular test was rather cumbersome. It was complicated, it was expensive, it was taking a lot of time, it was very prone to contamination, so you needed some time to have different labs. And Qiagen really standardized and simplified it with a revolutionary innovation called the spin column. And basically, suddenly, we made the capacity to extract and purify nucleic acid very simple. And this is how so many people, as you graciously said, Raphael, started to know the blue and the red boxes. And obviously the company changed a lot from there. I mean, for us, sample technology is still a very quick technology, but today it's fair to say that we offer molecular-based solution to a wide array of labs, whether they are research, academia, clinical, or pharma, and I'll come back to that, biotechs as well. From sample tech to data interpretation, we are probably the only company offering solution in PCR, digital PCR, but also next generation sequencing technology. And in the last at least 20 years, we have been one of the pioneers in precision medicine. And so over 20 years, we have built a set of more than 30 collaborations with pharma companies, with, as of today, 14 FDA-approved companion diagnostics, which is really unique. As I said before, I do believe that we are the only company able to provide a solution to pharma company on PCR, on next-generation sequencing, but also now with digital PCR. Regardless of the application, obviously most of our work as of today is in oncology, but we might come back to that. We go outside of oncology now, regardless of the sample type. And we do that really from the inception of the project itself with the pharma company to the reimbursement and to the launch of the CDX. Because you know, Raphael, that one of the biggest issues when you have a companion diagnostic available is making it accessible to a large number of patients as quickly as possible. You need to have that timely combination of the drug available and the companion diagnostic. And in the last 5 years, we have signed what we call Qiagen Day One network, where we have a set of labs, specific partners all over the world, where we know that as soon as the drug is available and also obviously the companion diagnostic, we can test immediately. In the US, for example, Neogen or LabCorp are part of this network, and it allows us to be even more efficient.
What is the global footprint of your diagnostic distribution? I mean, how many regions are you able to serve?
I think it's a condition for success. We are truly a global company. Obviously, we are still very proud to be headquartered in Germany, very close to Düsseldorf. This is where the story started. But we have manufacturing, research and development sites all over the world. In Germany, obviously, but also in the UK, for example, in Manchester, where we do most of our consumables for PCR. In the US, close to Washington, where we do most of our consumables for next generation sequencing. But we have also a presence in Massachusetts in enzymes and oligos. Most of our resources in bioinformatics are in California, but also in the Nordic countries. And we have also smaller, but still very relevant manufacturing and research and development centers in China as well, and a smaller site in Japan. So being global is obviously, as I said before, a key condition of success. We sell all over the world. And we have also a very important motto for us. We used to say, we leave no one behind. And what we mean by this, I know that many people are considering healthcare as a business. It might be a business. We are a commercial company, but we believe that first and foremost, healthcare is a right. And so serving Africa is as important as serving Germany or the United States, for example.
I think that's a wonderful point. You know, to a lesser degree, because we're obviously, we have a smaller footprint, our company goes out of its way to source data from all of these geographies. You know, in building AI models, we're very cognizant that if we only feed AI models from people who look like yourself and myself, then that's all the models will learn, right? If we want our algorithms, you know, see the world, they have to see the world.
Absolutely. And that's the way to go. And if you look at the FDA, for example, very concretely close to us in the US, the FDA, when you run the clinical trials, they will demand for most of the assays that you can ensure that you have a wide representation of any kind of ethnicities, because obviously sometimes result differs as well. So I think that's the way to go, clearly.
I mean, you open the door to so many interesting topics, but maybe before picking one to dive deeper, we can just take a little step back. I'd love to understand more about your journey. So you've been in this industry for, correct me if I'm wrong, probably 3 decades, and the last decade at Qiagen. You know, what's been your journey in precision medicine? How have you seen the field evolve as you've worked in it?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's already close to 30 years. You might be surprised to learn that I'm not a scientist by background. However, something like 25 years ago, I literally fell in love with diagnostic and its complexity. The fact that you need to combine skills in chemistry, biology, engineering with instrumentation, and also bioinformatics is fascinating to me. And also because, as we all know, for the last 15, 20 years, the terminology precision medicine is becoming more and more relevant. And it's fair to say that today it's not a vision, it's a fact. I mean, and those bridges created between diagnostic industry, in vivo or in vitro, and pharma are, for me, part of the future of diagnostics. So when I joined Qiagen 10 years ago, Qiagen was already involved in precision medicine. We already had some partnership with pharma. And since then, we continue to develop this activity. How? First of all, by offering more solutions. 10 years ago, it was mainly on PCR. Now, as I said before, it's also on next generation sequencing. It's also on digital PCR. 10 years ago, it was, and it's still mainly, but it was mainly in the, let's say, three main cancers and mainly oncology. It was really following the demand of pharma companies, breast, colorectal, lung cancers. And we see a significant evolution towards more, let's say, liquid-based cancers, leukemias, lymphomas. 10 years ago, we decided to pioneer research into liquid biopsies, which is so key now in so many of those companion diagnostics with pharmas. It's fair to say that we are probably the only company in the world fully mastering the key three technologies around liquid biopsies, cccDNA, CTCs, or exosome. And recently, you have seen many publications showing the relevance or the increased relevance of exosome. Find it interesting. And now we are moving out of oncology. You might have seen recently this week, we published a press release of a partnership with Eli Lilly to help understanding better the progression of Alzheimer with what we call a syndromic PCR platform of Qiagen called QIAstat. We have a partnership with a young company called Neuron23 on Parkinson's diseases. Those are fields where, from a clinical test or life science test standpoint, we were not really active. But precision medicine allows us to venture into those fields. So this is how we try to contribute. And last but not least, Raphael, I would say that if 10 years ago we were focusing on the development of the companion diagnostic, now we try to offer the really full journey from obviously research and trials, the development of the kit itself, but the full journey towards reimbursement and regulatory approval. And that's also what makes Qiagen unique.
Yeah, I think, there's a challenge in the field that those last two pieces are sometimes only taken up or thought of or strategized when you reach the point of needing to achieve, regulatory approval or find someone to reimburse. How does Qiagen engage there? This is through your partnerships with pharma, or do you have your own teams that look out for Qiagen products on their own and with regards to seeking reimbursement and seeking regulatory approval?
It's both. So you're perfectly right. First of all, why does a pharma pick Qiagen? I think it's because of our breadth of solution, as I said before. It's because our install base in many instruments, but that ability to take a companion diagnostic to regulatory approval is proven and is key. I said 14 FDA-approved companion diagnostic. And indeed, it's a challenge because the landscape is changing. First of all, as you know, Raphael, there is no worldwide unified regulatory landscape. So what you do in the US has to be redone in Europe, has to be redone in China or Japan. Obviously, there are growing similarities, but still it's a new process all the time. Second, you probably know that the landscape in Europe has changed recently. It's the move to IVDR, which we embrace at Qiagen. We believe that the regulatory landscape before IVDR in Europe was a bit too complacent, too easy. The problem is that Europe being a mosaic, anytime you want to bring your test to approval, you have to go country by country. So it's really challenging, it's lengthy. So very close collaboration with pharma across that timeline is key, but we have a fully dedicated clinical affairs team and regulatory affairs team. We engage a lot in what we call pre-submission with the regulatory authorities to test the water, if I may simplify, to see how they would react proactively with our project. I will never tell you, Raphael, that we are able to systematically solve the challenge of time and cost, but we are quite experienced, and I think we have a relation of trust with either the notified bodies in Europe, like the TÜV, for example, in Germany, or with the FDA in the US, clearly.
That makes sense. I mean, there may not be so much an economy of scale, but there's absolutely the experience and the relationship building that matters a great deal.
And what is interesting, and it's also a testament, obviously there are many reasons beyond that, but it's very interesting to see we constantly sign amendments to contract because the pharma company continues to trust Qiagen after the US, for example, or after Europe to say, okay, I now want to go to Japan and I want Qiagen to be my partner because they know that we know also, for example, the PMDA authorities in Japan. So it's also a testament to that efficiency and that good relation.
How does Qiagen engage with physicians themselves? Getting, obviously, a reimbursement code is critical. Getting regulatory approval is critical. But then, one of the lingering challenges in precision medicine is, frankly, doctors don't always prescribe the test. Sometimes they don't know about it. Sometimes they just choose not to. I may be citing old data, but I think the number was something like 30% of lung cancers get a molecular test, which is crazy because the PCR, like if you have an EGFR mutation, the drugs are really good, right? Now we have KRAS drugs, which they're not as good as EGFR, but
Absolutely.
How do we get more sort of physician uptake of these tests, in your opinion?
You are really nailing it down. This is one of the key challenge, but also opportunity. Long story short, it's all about education, awareness, and also integration into clinical guidelines. On awareness, I think, if I may use that word, I believe we are on a better ride now, on easier ride. That doesn't mean that we should take it for granted, but COVID has helped a lot. And I hate to talk about COVID as an opportunity because it killed so many people. But there is no doubt that the awareness around the benefits of one, diagnostic in the healthcare value chain, but also molecular diagnostic in the diagnostic value chain has increased a lot before and after COVID. Of course, clinicians knew about it, but everybody knows what a PCR test is. Everybody knows that next generation sequencing results are available quicker than before and also are much more affordable. Everybody knows that whole genome sequencing is at least between 5 to 10 times cheaper than 5 years ago, for example. The same will go to a whole exome sequencing, for example. Second, integration into clinical guidelines. And this, we have to collaborate with, obviously, we need to publish in peer reviews. We need to collaborate. For example, recently we had a collaboration with the American Association of Liver Physicians. And we make sure that we include, or they include our test in their protocols and clinical guidelines. And last but not least, we need to spend money, but that's the way it is in what we call medical liaison. People that are on the field, systematically visiting hospitals and giving basically education sessions. It's always a challenge because, the number one problem of physicians is that they have no time. Another way also to do that, you probably have seen that recently Qiagen announced a new partnership with a company like Myriad Genetics, for example, a CLIA lab in the US, very much specialized into oncology, other applications as well. And those CLIA labs, they have sometimes a better level of relationship that we do with physicians directly, because a diagnostic company mainly talks to labs rather than physicians. Even if obviously a company like Qiagen does have a chief medical officer. And we have medicalized, if I can say, our products over the last 15 years. But partnering with Myriad Genetics in oncology or with Helix for hereditary diseases gives us a new access to clinicians as well.
It's easy for most of us, even those in the industry, to lose sight of all of the different stakeholders, right? And that a diagnostics company is not the same as a lab, is not the same as a clinician, is not the same. These are different stakeholders who need to communicate.
Something that might help, and we believe in that, and I say might because it takes time, is that also data interpretation has become so much better. The genomic revolution obviously has given us access to trillions or more of data, but what's the relevance of that if you are not able to transform those data into clinically actionable or medically actionable results? And this is why over the last 15 years, we have so forcefully invested into bioinformatics, either organically or via acquisitions, to become one of the leaders in NGS data interpretation, especially secondary interpretation. And basically, with some of our softwares, a clinician literally receives only one page, Raphael, where he will be able to clearly understand, okay, that next generation sequencing result translate into that therapeutic recommendation. And that's the way to go. They have no time to understand the complexity of RNA, DNA testing, and so on. No, they need to see how does it, so what for my patient? And that's what our softwares are doing.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Talking Precision Medicine, powered by Genialis. We'll return shortly with more of this insightful conversation. In today's episode, Thierry Bernard explores Qiagen's impact on global healthcare and its advancements in precision medicine. Genialis shares this commitment, actively working to advance a new generation of precision oncology tools around the world. Recently, at the RAS Targeted Drug Development Summit, our team showcased new data on Genialis KRAS-ID, a novel biomarker algorithm that predicts patient response and clinical benefit to KRAS inhibitors, demonstrating robust performance across various tissue histologies and mutation types. Genialis KRAS-ID is designed to support all phases of drug development. Find out why top pharmaceutical companies are evaluating KRAS-ID for their development programs through the link in this description. If you enjoy this show and would like to hear more episodes with more great guests more often, there's one thing you can do to help. Subscribe. Please follow us on your favorite podcast streaming service and leave us a review or comments. Thanks, and now back to the conversation. I'm so glad you brought up data and data interpretation. I want to dive in a little bit more. You've mentioned bioinformatics a number of times. Let's talk a bit about Qiagen's capabilities, both in terms of software. I know you've developed yourself and acquired a number of interesting pieces of software, how they fit, but also what you're doing in the background. The real challenge, in my opinion, of a molecular diagnostic is you have to figure out the entire complexity of the disease biology. What is the one thing you're going to measure that's going to give you actionable information, right? And obviously with NGS, we don't have to measure one thing, but we have to reduce the interpretation of it to one thing. Walk me through a little bit how Qiagen approaches that, what capabilities you have, and how that would go into building a test.
So one thing for me is, first of all, to be true to your key knowledge. So we are a molecular company. Let's stick to that. We are a mid-cap, first of all, so we need to focus. What I mean by this is that there are so many opportunities. I understand the power of spatial biology. I understand the power of proteomics. I understand the power of protein analysis. We look at that, obviously. But let's never forget that what has made this company extremely strong is that understanding of the two main building blocks of life, DNA and RNA. So let's continue to make sure that it's very easy to venture everywhere. But okay, if we want to continue to give added value solution to our customers, let's continue to focus on where we are very relevant. We are relevant in sample tech. I know that many people think that sample technology is a technology of the past. Now many systems are fully integrated. You do lysis, you do sample tech, amplification and reading. No, especially in research, you really need very dedicated sample technologies. And the explosion of innovations around, as I said before, liquid biopsies, or even, for example, in new application. Nobody was talking about minimal residual diseases some 5 years ago. Now it's becoming something of relevant. You need to have very dedicated sample tech capabilities, intelligence. And we have a fully dedicated research and development team here. And then we have also, obviously, then after a fully dedicated kit development in oncology, we specialize our team in oncology, mainly in oncology and infectious diseases. We cannot venture into too many applications. That notion of specialization is very key to us. When you deal with pharma companies, you do not deal with a research lab. It's not the same as dealing with, as you said before, a clinician or a clinical lab. So we have a dedicated team only for pharma relationships. And we have a dedicated development team in Manchester in the UK, which is just working on the development of companion diagnostic. So this specialization is key as well. And I know that some people sometimes are always pushing us to innovation should be and should remain part of our DNA. But always let us make sure that we continue to invest in what has made this company so relevant and so strong. That's how I would address your question.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, this resonates a lot with me and our work at Genialis as well. We recognize there are any number of things you could measure about a patient sample in order to try to achieve a diagnostic readout. And I think a lot of the protein and spatial technologies are really fantastic, but we've chosen to focus on RNA, as I mentioned to you at the top of the call, in part because we think it's a little more futuristic than DNA, right? It's a little more cutting edge because it's not as mature, but it is sufficiently commoditized thanks to the sample prep technologies becoming very robust So the RNA, I think, is now rather ready for regulatory prime time.
Oh, I would agree with you. And you can be also flexible. And I don't want to go into too many details, but you don't have to do it all. I mean, sometime, for example, recently we have entered a collaboration with a clinician in the US because we found this project interesting. He is using basically mRNA to try to address sepsis. She's very innovative. This is a field where we were absolutely not active. But basically, our role is to give him or provide him and his lab with all the tools for the recipe, and then basically it's up to him to finalize the development, and we support him, but we don't have it to do everything. At the same time, when I said, of course, we need to remain true to our core knowledge, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't follow the evolution of obviously the demand. You mentioned, I think, some minutes ago, KRAS, for example, and KRAS has been basically a very well-validated biomarker for many years. I mean, its relevance for, again, the main cancers, but we need to constantly see whether it cannot be relevant for other kind of cancers and application in oncology, and this is what we are doing. We saw an increased demand from pharma also in trying to better understand resistance mutations. You see, for example, mutation inhibitors like EGFRs, for example, and we need to obviously follow that demand. But again, specifically with molecular techniques and specifically either via PCR, digital PCR, or a next generation sequencing. Venturing away from that would not be the good solution for Qiagen.
What we've found is that, leveraging technologies like NGS, which produce obviously quite a lot of data, to get to that one-page physician report and have something really meaningful, we've been able to harness new technologies like machine learning and other branches of artificial intelligence. How do you see this impacting Qiagen's products, especially on sort of the CDX side? And are you investing in research there, or is that coming in through collaboration primarily?
Both once again, because especially for a mid-cap, you always need to be pragmatic enough to say, sometimes I do that organically, sometimes it's so key that I want to do it organically, but I need to partner. And I have a key sentence always in my head, which is, if you cannot beat them, join them, always. So that's very simple. So we gave the market a quite bold statement 6 months ago when I came out and said, we really want to be the digital tool and diagnostic company. And I believe in that. First of all, because with our bioinformatics activities, we have invested in AIs for the last at least 5 to 6 years. Once again, unique because Qiagen will never believe in AI data generated only. And there has been other experiences on the market, and unfortunately, they failed. We believe in the combination of manual data curation, but leveraging AI to make it more efficient. And so for the last 15 years, we have built a tremendous what we call knowledge base, which is mostly fueled by those manual data curation. Qiagen has hundreds of PhDs all over the world who, as we speak, Raphael, are constantly curating data. And then over the last, obviously, 5 years, we have invested into AI techniques to make it quicker, even more accurate, and able to generate and analyze more, obviously, quantities of data. Number one. Number two, if you look at radiology, there is no doubt, a field where we are not, but there is no doubt that AI has already impacted the medical and clinical environment of radiology. And in my view, there is no doubt that it will happen also for diagnostic. First of all, I believe that AI will allow pharma companies, but also clinicians, to merge, I would say, the results of in vitro and in vivo tests. And today, it's still very, very much two siloed kind of activities. Let me give you another very precise example. We are having some research activities at Qiagen on how a smart usage of smart algorithm can help us not only accelerating time to result, but most importantly for me, stratifying patients. What I do mean by this is that we have enough data now to say that in some applications, I would say sepsis, for example, as I said before, you could build algorithm that will help you with a significant level of accuracy to stratify the patient going, for example, to the emergency room and say, this patient, clearly, it's green. Some basically ibuprofen, and you can send her or him back home. This one, careful. Keep him or her in observation for 3 or 4 hours. This one, even more careful, needs to be basically admitted. And we have pretty good concordance scores with classical tests that are taken. I'm not saying that those tests will eliminate other tests, but it's a pre-test that is enabling us to stratify patients. So we believe in that, for example. In Boston, we are collaborating more and more with an interesting company which is using AI to develop basically new kinds of enzymology, for example. So it's very key. AI for us is obviously a tool to become more efficient in processes, but especially in the coming 5 years, will be an integrated part of what we are going to provide clinical or research labs with, or pharma company also with, clearly.
No, that's a great answer. I'm heartened to see that it's touching, the field of the technologies is touching a lot of different parts of the work, from enzymology to bioinformatics to the physician report.
Absolutely.
Thierry, this has been a really wonderful conversation. And, I had a laundry list of questions, which you've managed to answer without me even asking most of them, either reading my mind or reading my notes. But I'd just like to end on a bit more about your vision. You've talked about moving CDX into other fields, neurodegenerative diseases in particular. You've talked about sepsis and making headway there. And frankly, it's the number one killer in hospitals. So if we're committed to leaving no one behind, that's a good place to start. But maybe you can sum up your vision for the precision medicine field, but also for Qiagen in the next 5 to 10 years. If Qiagen does its job right, where will we be with precision medicine in the next half decade to decade?
Long story short, the vision I have would say that precision medicine will be part of the clinical pathway of most, not to say every patient. Because let's be honest, for the time being, it's still for a kind of limited number of patients. Patients with difficult tumors, tumors that are constantly mutating and so on. And there is also a cost-saving vision behind a lot of precision medicine development, basically selecting the right patient for drugs that are still very expensive. The way I see it tomorrow is that because many of those cancers are becoming or will be becoming more and more chronic for some patients, I mean, you will basically not die from it, but you might have basically to monitor them over a very long period of time, more than today, then it will be part of your typical clinical pathway, recurring, many times a year. And this will be possible because technologies will continue to become cheaper, because technologies will also be much more decentralized. If you look at one of the solutions that I mentioned at a point today, our syndromic platform for syndromic testing, it's screening a significant level of pathogen in less than 1 hour. And basically, the instrument is the size, Raphael, of your laptop, and the consumable is the size of your iPhone. And once you have basically barcoded the cartridge, you plug it in and it's load and go, and you just wait for the result. Technologies like microfluidics will continue to impact that. So that's the vision I have, that those tests, they are already a reality. Their value is not to be proven, but they will be becoming more and more part of the routine of any kind of patient clinical pathway. That's the vision I have. And where we are still a bit slow, but I'm always optimistic, in applications that are outside of oncology for precision medicine, let's be clear. Today, we are, as we were in oncology 15 years ago. You still see a bit of cautiousness. Pharma companies are interested, but they are still cautious. 15 years ago, you see the level of investment was not where it is now. So it's encouraging to see new application and new demands for hereditary diseases, for neurodegenerative, as I said before, Alzheimer, Parkinson. This is going to continue. And if you think about it, I don't like to only be speaking about markets, but the markets for hereditary or neurodegeneratives are far bigger than the market for oncology. So that's the vision I have, and I think it's going to happen. And the technologies are going to enable that, clearly.
I share your vision, and I'm excited to collaborate in whatever ways to make this a reality. Thierry Bernard, thank you so much for your time today. This was really a pleasure and a thrill.
It was my pleasure. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you.
This has been another episode of the Talking Precision Medicine podcast, brought to you by Genialis. Hopefully by now you've subscribed to the show, but if not, go ahead and click that subscribe button and leave us a review. And please do pay us a visit at www.genialis.com. That's www.genialis.com to learn more about how AI is transforming precision medicine. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.